Okay,
Oh,
so we're
yeah.
officially live. Alrighty. So, we're obviously group five. We're going to be talking about and reviewing the film American Violet, which centers around this character named Dee, who finds herself at the center of this very common narrative of war on drugs. So basically, the story is that this woman named Dee is mother of four who lives in the projects in a lower income neighborhood in Texas. And there is a drug raid that happens in her apartment complex that clears out a whole lot of people, and she gets arrested as well and falsely accused of selling cocaine in a school zone. And the whole film charts her dealings with the law, particularly how there's this institutional racism that is trying to force her into making plea deals and saying that she's guilty even though she's not in order to gain some other control. And so she ends up fighting the system with the help of an ACLU lawyer who wants to kind of bring that corruption to light. And at the end of the whole film, it works out for her benefit because they do manage to get all her charges dropped. They do also get manage to get all the records of the other people who were charged dropped as well. Their criminal records are expunged, and they expose enough internal corruption that there's at least a solid feeling of hope by the end of the film that more drug raids will stop, that the additional drug raids will stop, and so they can continue to live out their lives peacefully. And so the first thing I want to talk about is since Dee is a single mother on welfare, is would she be considered a proper subject? Stephanie, I believe you have to start on that.
Yes. In the Bad Mothers article on page 140, there is a quote where it says, concluding that the parenting skills of an incarcerated mother with mental disabilities or a drug addiction fall short of ideal standards does not mean that a woman is incapable of parenting or that her parenting is so bad that her parental rights should be terminated. So this directly draws into the proper subject. Is D a proper subject? Based on the stuff that we've learned in class throughout the semester, she is not the proper subject. She is black. She has multiple children with multiple fathers. She's single, so she is kind of tossing over the patriarchy. She works a minimum wage type job, and she's on welfare. So we find that she does not meet like any of the criteria of being like the proper subject or the ideal mother. Um, who was gonna go next?
Um,
Pink, I
yes.
believe, has some stuff to talk about in relation to class and such.
I think she also not the proper subject, but even though she is a good mother, but she is not like the ideal motherhood
Mm-hmm.
because she's incarcerated before when she was 16, I believe,
Mm-hmm. I
when
think something like
she
that.
steal a diaper for her kid. Even though she's caring for her kid, but still she already incarcerated before. And also, she's really like not as a good mother in the way of other people see her, but in herself, she probably thinking that she is a good mother.
You mentioned that in class you guys talked about like the incarcerated mother that was a contradiction. Did you want to talk
Yeah,
about that?
let me see. We talk about in class that the incarcerated mother also like they have a effect on her children, like their mental issue, how they going on like during her community, and what other will see her children. Like in the movie at the church, the little girl was like, "You your mother is on drug, she been arrested to go to the jail, and then she get all physical attack with that little girl in the church. That's also have like an issue on her mentality too. That
So that kind of trickles down to the kids from
yeah.
that. Yeah. Um, so from there, was there anything else on proper subject that anyone else wanted to add to that? Or
No, I think that's all that
yeah,
I
I think
have.
that covers it. Yeah. So long story short, unfortunately, she isn't. Even though I think we mentioned we can all kind of agree that the proper subject is sort of culturally constructed, regardless of the fact that she's mothering the best she can, regardless of the fact that she's not that ideal image.
And that's like I made sure to say ideal or proper because
With your scare quotes, scare quotes.
we know that that's not
So
actually a thing.
yeah.
So I think the next thing we're
Favorite scene.
going to go into what scene we're doing, right?
Yes, yes. The scene that we really like. Well, I know because we both, Stephanie, you and I both watched the ending of the film, so there was a scene that resonated with us. What was what was that thing called?
Deposition.
There you go. That one. That one. You want to bring us around to that one, Stephanie? I don't know English words.
I think there were two deposition scenes, but this one is specifically the deposition scene where Dee is being deposed, where she is the her attorneys and the attorney for the DA is questioning her on her life just in general, and
Real personal.
all of that. So one of the biggest things that stood out to me was this idea from the ACLU of a school to prison pipeline, and how this is really shown in this scene is when they're questioning her about her first incarceration, and she was 16 and she was stealing formula and Pampers for her baby, and she was incarcerated. Well, this goes into that school to prison pipeline where instead of giving her the support that she needs, she's put into the system, instead of, like I said, giving her the support and kind of building her up, so that she can have the support that she needs to be a good mother. Um, who is going to talk next?
Um,
I believe that's next.
The controlling images.
yeah,
No, next was Stacey. You were talking about employment. I believe we had this
Oh, that's
conversation
right.
about
right.
employment opportunities.
In the beginning of that scene, that's when I guess he was a lawyer. I guess
It was a lawyer on
where
the
he
side
was.
of the DA.
Yeah, yeah, that was siding with the DA. He was asking Dee, did she
The
have a
guy we all
job?
hate.
Of course, we all unanimously hate.
Yeah.
Very
We were
important to know
asked.
that.
Yeah, he was asking about did she have a job? What's her source of income? And the fact that she needs money. And she explained that because of the arrest on a charge that she was not, found guilty on or was dropped actually, um, it affected her, livelihood, starting with her employment. And with her not having a job or any source of income, it in turns not allow her to take care of her children financially, which also to piggyback with all the other group members talking about her not being able to be a fit mother in a sense because she's not be able to, provide for them financially, on top of her not being a proper subject as well. So that trickles down into other parts of it, and it started with the arrest as well as her employment.
Hey, Stacy, didn't you have something from the Bad Mothers article? Was on page 160 that went into that?
I know I did.
I
That
don't
was
have it
from.
pulled up.
Oh,
I don't have it pulled up right now. My computer died on me. My apologies.
Because I know I had one in particular.
Oh, yeah. I wrote it down. So
There
it
it is.
was saying it,
There it
yeah.
is.
So I don't have the quote, but it does talk about the job discrimination and employment bans that the Bad
Oh
Mother
yeah,
article
yeah.
did have with women with criminal records. So it
Mhm.
did mention on that, I don't have an exact quote, but it did talk about the employment part of it with the criminal records.
Is it where it says job discrimination and employment bans also get in the way of women
Absolutely.
securing employment or otherwise being able to support her children?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly it right there.
Didn't she say in a different part of the movie where she was talking about if she took the plea deal that her baby wouldn't have medicine and they wouldn't have a place to stay and all of that because she'd be a convicted felon?
Yeah. It also means that, employment would be considerably more difficult. You even see that when she's let out originally on the charges that she can't get her original job back just because she's being investigated, even though nothing's been found. And
Right.
then finding employment after that is really difficult for her.
As
So,
well as her taking away any kind of state benefits that she did have already. She's
Right.
not going to be
yeah.
able to get them with the felony.
hmm It's
I think people said that that law was passed in
Uh,
1996.
Bells when she was with the other three. Of course, my connection messes up. They were talking about how if they take the plea, then they're going to be kicked off of welfare, and they're not going to be able to get anything that they've had before. So
so well, the next was up on our list was to I believe Pink had some information about the about public-private, about how public-private becomes a very big conversation in this scene,
Yeah,
um, especially by that one guy. It gets
that one
real.
guy, what his name, do you remember?
Oh, I need to look it up. I had the IMDb list, but honestly, I can't tell the actors on it. I've just been remembering him as the one I hate personally,
Yeah,
but
just he was
just to
saying,
be honest.
he was first asking her like, is Daryl the father of your children? And she was like, two of them, but not the first older two, but not the second, the
Yeah,
third and
it was
fourth.
the youngest two. He was
The
the
yeah, the
the
youngest
dad,
two. Oh yeah, the youngest two.
just the youngest two. Yeah, and but
And then
not the older two. The older two had separate dads, right?
yeah, and then he kind of turned into like asking her how many men have you have sex with in in the past 8 years, which is that is not
It's
really,
way too first.
yeah, it doesn't relate to any of her connection with the drug and anything. He just way go beyond what other people might ask about and judge her based by that. And he also mentioned that the father like Pearl, like many men
Yeah,
that she sleep with.
and I think this plays into what you guys were saying earlier about like this sort of proper subject because she's slept with too many men now, and
Yeah,
so
also
yeah,
playing
and they're
that too.
yeah, and the fact that this very personal part of her life, this very personal information, how many men she slept with, is now being used in a legal stance to try and make her seem like less of a
The
mother.
And
mother.
Yeah.
what's kind of sad about that is depositions are public records, so at any point somebody can pull that up and have that information on her.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, it's good to know that I hate everything now. But
It's not
yeah,
like
so
yeah, I mean, it's not like she didn't, agree to this movie and everybody didn't already know this in the first place, but just
yeah,
everybody else, it's
good
still
stuff. Yeah, it's awful. But like you're saying, it also plays into that concept of proper subject, where because she has had these, she's had different fathers, and plus I think they mentioned that all the fathers, save for Daryl, Exhibit's character, are incarcerated.
Yeah.
So she's
both of them was for drugs.
yeah.
Mm.
So And so I think, like you were saying, Pinky, about the public-private, it's like I said, all these very personal bits of her life are suddenly on display just for the sake of showing that she's not a proper subject, just for the sake of saying, oh, look how bad you are at all these things. You must be a bad mother. You must have these bad character traits, which is shown to be largely false throughout the
Yeah.
entirety of the film. Like she gets really aggressive at one point, but otherwise she's a good mom, you
Yeah.
know. So you shouldn't be having to air out someone's dirty laundry just for the sake of finding out whether or not they actually sold cocaine. That's completely like you should be airing out their dirty laundry on their possible drug deals, not about their sex life, but
Right.
evidently. Was it something when we're talking about and all of these subjects really relate to reproductive politics, like we've seen in the past, obviously. But one a scene thing that I thought was very interesting and plays into sort of this concept of proper subject, and et cetera, is in that bit where they're tearing down Dee and her character. Um, there is these. You okay over there, Stacey?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get closer to the window so I can get some more service.
Okay. So there's a repeat of these controlling images that we see really commonly. Like we saw in that reading from way back when these matriarchs and etc. And even though Dee herself doesn't play out those, at least not much in terms of those characteristics, those controlling images. In fact, she does a really good job of being this, and because it's based off a real story, because she's this real human that actually existed, or at least based off this real woman that actually existed, who are infinitely more complex than just these images. She doesn't actually become any of them, but even then, for the sake of this scene, like they're trying to make her into this box. They see her as this black woman who's subverting patriarchal norms and dismantling the that powerful fiction of the nuclear family, because she's enacting a family without a man, without a male household. And then she has multiple children from multiple different men, from different partners, and all of them, and 2 out of the 3 are incarcerated for drug-related offenses, and the third one has been shown to be at least very aggressive, and as they mentioned at some point in the film, that he's been abusive to her in the past. Like, she has all these characteristics, so they're just like, oh, and you can so tell by the way they're addressing her with this attitude, like they kind of sneer at her when they speak to her, they talk down to her, because they just assume she's just another welfare queen. She's just that image of that mom, and they all but say it, really, because there's a moment where it's essentially said, oh, it must be very hard to be you, and they say to her that I bet a big fat check from the government would help. I bet a big fat check would make your life easier. So they're essentially just doing this, which is a very common narrative, especially with women, where there's just this assumption that they're playing you to get something out of you, so get some kind of benefit. And that's a very common notion, specifically with the welfare queen, that they're playing the system in order to get some money rather than like fixing themselves, which is gross, and I'm sure we can all agree has lots of problems, because Dee's been shown to be a fully fledged character outside of that. But this also relates into a quote that I want to use later within Bad Mothers at the top of page 141, where it says, furthermore, a mother has a well-established and fundamental right to raise her children without undue interference from the government. Under the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment Due Process Clause, people have an essential right to create a home and to the custody, care, and companionship and nurturing of their children. The fundamental right to a family encompasses the right to not have the state interfere in how a woman decides to raise and educate her children, as well as the right of relatives to live together. The right of parents does not automatically disappear when a woman is incarcerated, but that first bit, because in this scene, like, the state is clearly getting very heavily involved in her business. It's that public-private split, like you were talking about, get their hands right in there, and it means that by doing this, by digging up this very personal information, they're using it as a justification to sort of like tell her how she should live her life and question her methods in caring for her children, her ability to care for her children. The drug raids that led her to this situation, in fact, causes this governmental like hand just in her business and in her family, making it difficult for her to raise her kids, which I think is a good place to leap off into like other scenes, because there are lots of other scenes that we can talk about that we have mentioned that have reproductive politics issues in it. I think, and this is a good note to spur off into, Stacey, you want to talk about the, because you mentioned that the welfare queen played out in another scene, right?
Right. The opening scene when Dee is in the apartment, in her apartment with her kids, and she's making them breakfast, and she's getting them ready to go over to her mother's house before she goes to work. And it when she's interacting with her kids, you can tell that she cares. She is a parent that does care, and in a sense, that's where the argument of the fit and unfit, mother comes with it. She does care. She just doesn't have all the resource of it. But as they're walking out of the apartment, you can see the environment that they're around, and you can see that she definitely lives in a, low income apartment, and that she has these kids that she needs to take care of, and then she's about to go to this minimum, wage job. You see all these things going on. And for me, I feel like that her being in the low income, her being a woman, not having a man there, and not being married, challenges the nuclear family. So that part of it will be the welfare queen that Patricia Hill Collins speaks of in Mammy's Matriarchs and Control the Images article. But she is employed, and that's the part about the black lady that I would say that she does have. And in my screening report, I wrote about this opening scene, and she as her being a welfare queen, she doesn't have a man around, and she's poor. But one of the other qualities of being a welfare queen is also that they're materialistic and they're domineering, and she doesn't come up as either one of those in the movie overall. And she may not be considered middle class, or she has children, which will challenge the black lady. However, she is employed. So she has some qualities of both of these images, these controlling images that will be seen for black women that are looked at as, things for black women. And she's able to grasp the scene was able to talk about, or to show the things that she's going through as a mother in a poor community, and all of that she would be considered a welfare queen. The things that she's going through, her house, where she lives, her environment, having all these children, they show all this stuff. And it's not a lot of dialogue in that opening scene. However, you can see what's going on. And she was very adamant about getting work and working, and she didn't have childcare, of course, but she had her mom helping her with that. But that shows that she actually really wanted to work, really wanted to contribute to society, is not trying to be lazy, as this idea of welfare queens, they're lazy and they don't want to do anything. So I think that scene was very compelling for me to identify the welfare queen, but challenge it also with the black lady image, and put them, together alongside each other.
I dig it. which I think, if funnily enough, it happens to go in chronological order, is in a spur off of that. Stephanie, you want to talk about the drug grade scene, right?
Yes, I want to piggyback on what you were saying about having a kind of like a safe environment to raise your kids.
Yeah.
So you see in the scene, Dee's oldest daughter, her grandma asks her to take this bowl uh, to her aunt's house, who also lives in that same complex. So the little girl is carrying this giant bowl, and as she is carefully walking through the parking lot, you see all of these men in black running up in the helicopter overhead, and the little girl is obviously scared and she trips, and this bowl shatters, and we're left with this image of it's not just the bowl that shatters, but this child's innocence, where she is forced to grow up. She is put in a situation that is dangerous, and you're kind of left believing this is the first time that she's experienced this, even though in the film later they discuss how this is a common occurrence. Um, you're just left knowing that this child is no longer innocent, which is sad, very sad. I think Pink was gonna talk next.
Yes.
Yes.
Pink, yeah,
The
go.
the scene that spoke to me the most is the interrogation room in the jail's house, where the attorney David Hicken and the assistant district attorney Robert Foster come in and talk to her, and every time she say anything they try to cut her off, and it was just like unprofessional of them to do that, and they feel like they have the authority, they have all the power, they can just take control of the situation, and they don't even want to listen to her at all. They told her it would be better if she like silence, keep her voice down, don't say anything. And it just the is kind of like a institutional racism there,
Yeah.
where she have no control over all of them. They try to also, she's like defending herself that she is innocent. They was like asking her, do you have a kid? And they used her kids as a tool to try to convince her to the plea bargain.
Yeah.
They try to like use that her kids as the solution to everything, like if you don't do this, then what will happen to her kid? So she like kind of second guess herself, should I do this or should I not do this for the her kid's sake? So
It's
but
To tackle or to jump in on that, you can see with the institutionalized racism, it's very apparent when you notice that the DA and the public defender are obviously losing. They're working together to get more convictions, because they say again later in the movie that they get more money the more convictions there are. Which again, like I said, is institutionalized racism, like bald-faced institutionalized racism.
like they don't have a need to listen to her, because if they can convince her to flee,
Yeah.
then that's all they really need. But
yeah, it's like they come here just to tell her to take the plea bargain and go home and be with her kid. They don't want to listen to her or anything.
Yeah, they don't even want to give her actual help, because surely they have to know that her taking the plea bargain will, remove her, it will remove her food stamps, it'll kick her out of her government housing,
All
and
her
it'll
benefits and stuff.
and remove all her benefits. They have to know, but they're still telling her to take the plea anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still, and like you said, they're using the kids as leverage. They're saying they're playing on this motherhood, that nature that she has, which conveniently she does play out that image of the mom that common image of mothers being selfless, where you see her do it multiple times, where she sort of sacrifices herself for her kids. Like when she's incarcerated first time, it's because she was, stealing for her kids. She was stealing diapers and formula. Um, so they really just picked the thing to kind of try and get at her.
That mean the most to her, and then just like chew that out to her.
We're actually right a little bit over, I believe. So I just wanted to quickly mention there was also another scene that really talked about reproductive politics. Really obviously was the scene where they're doing a custody battle over her kids, and if that isn't, that isn't obvious reproductive politics, what is? And especially is that the most obvious thing, which you can even talk about in that is fatherhood. It's playing out that common narrative of where dads aren't there and where dads aren't present for their children, and it's even seen like earlier in the film when Exhibit's character Daryl Hughes, when he does actually pick up his daughters and when he's giving them back to Dee's grandmother to go to church, he says, "I'll pick them up when I want them." Not which goes to this whole strange thing, the strange fatherhood narrative, where this absentee father image that's really powerful and really common, and Daryl's really playing that out regardless. But what gets me about the scene is the fact that it doesn't really seem like he's doing this custody battle because it's in the best interest of his daughters. It's in this very selfish parenting. He's doing it to try and get back at Dee. He's doing it to kind of make him, to stimulate his own sense of masculinity, to win something over on her because she's won his kids, so what does he have left? And plus she like damaged his car earlier, so he has to get back at her. It's like this rage and this attempt to build himself up rather than like let this woman break his truck or whatever. And so he's not even thinking about the best interest of his children, even though he knows that his children could be negatively affected by it because his current girlfriend's a child molester. So, but I mean, I think that covers a whole lot. Unless you guys, was there any last words that we have to say? Because we pretty much hit that mark, I believe, in terms of time.
I feel.
Go, Stacy, go.
Huh?
I was like, I thought you had to say something, so I was like, go, Stacy, go.
Well, no, I was gonna say that when y'all were talking, when we were talking about the pink scene that she picked, how she was talking about how they were using her children as a tool or whatever. They also were doing a fear tactic. They were like, well, they're gonna drag you through the courts and everything, and trying to push her or coerce her into to plea. Yeah, to plea. And in class we were talking about the definition of consent and how consent is basically when yes is it's freely given and no is possible, but it's not it's not going to affect the well-being or the livelihood of that person. And they were really trying to push her to do it, but she had reprimands that would come after that if she, if she didn't, and so they were scaring her with the scare tactic of, you don't have no lawyer, you don't have the money to do this. You're going to have to do that and that. So I think that when we got the definition of consent and then we're looking at it and we can say that they were not trying to consent. They were not trying to get her to consent. They were trying to coerce her into doing something.
Yeah. The coerced consent is not consent.
Right. So that's basically what I was going to say.
Yeah. Well, you also talk about when she was arrested, she was not read her rights. No one knew why she was being. And even when she went before the judge at the beginning, they asked, "Do you know why you're here?" And she said, "Unpaid parking tickets." And the judge and the DA and the public defender all laughed. Yeah. She wasn't. Yeah.
She wasn't informed. She wasn't informed.
Jail for like 21 days, not knowing what it's about. Why is
Uh,
she in jail for?
I think she went to the before the judge a little bit sooner than
Mhm.
that. But yeah, they just kind of
Mhm.
like, and it's the fact that they laughed at her. It's a lot of this movie disgusted me because I couldn't help but feel like the entire time all these characters was like, ha, a woman, what could she do? Like just being really like, oh, this woman over here just having like opinions and thoughts. How dare she? I don't. It was just so
Mhm.
many
Well,
problematic
I have to
things.
add on to that, not only is it because she's a woman, but she's a black woman.
Yeah, Lord forbid.
Right.
Lord forbid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
And also too, it
it was a
also
rough movie.
shows the lack of information they have on the laws
Yeah.
and you know how the judicial system works and everything,
Yeah.
and that she's targeted.
Yes.
This particular community is already targeted, and they're using her ignorance against her, basically.
Yeah. Because if she had known that it wasn't legal for them to arrest her under those circumstances, she could have been like, no, I want you to, I need to be released now. She could have talked to her lawyer and been like, I'm getting released now. You did something very illegal. And she could have made a thing about it right then and probably could have gotten out sooner, but they don't have that information. Right, of it.
Yeah,
Like,
they
people
have
don't
the
know
false
that.
information, like the tape record. It's not even her voice.
Yeah, and then they falsify information on top of that, and they just expect her not to fight it because they just assume
Yeah,
she'll just
Not only do they falsify information, but when they're all meeting at that restaurant, like the public defenders
things it.
lost this, we don't have this anymore. And they're like, well, can you get that stuff? And he's like, not so much.
It'll turn up
They lost
maybe.
both copies, really.
Yeah, and also paperwork too. They lost both copies and paperwork, and it's like, it'll turn up eventually, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you tell I'm irritated? So
yeah.
much
Probably
aggression in
they
this
didn't lost
movie.
it, but they just don't want to hand it over to her.
Oh, yeah. It's not in support of what they're trying to do, so of course
Yeah,
they're going to do that.
Trying to
yeah.
suppress evidence and all that.
But guys, I think we've definitely broken the bar in terms of time. We've talked about everything and summed it up, and then there's still we've definitely gone over. So you guys want to go ahead and cut it?
Sounds
And
good.
yeah, and I can edit it back a little bit later if we need to. So all right. Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much, ladies. You
Yay,
guys
we'll
have
see
a
All
good
right, thanks.
evening.
you. Yay.
Good night.
Bye. Good night.
All right.